Alright guys, I'm actually going to be recording a video on future diesel technology, so, essentially I have to, go upstairs first, but, yes, basically this video is going to be about the sort of recent history of diesel technology, and especially its implications, or especially emission control development, because that's really the heart of where, if you see any innovation coming from the diesel industry, it's mainly not really to increase performance, but mainly to minimize emissions. So we'll be going over that. Right. So first things first. In the last 20 years, in the United States, in the non-commercial market, the consumer, heavy-duty, light-duty pickup truck market, you've seen a large increase in performance, but kind of concomitant with an increase in emission standards, because it's a double-edged sword, where by implementing the innovations required to get the emissions down, you're actually also adding power, right? So imagine injection systems, right? So the way you increase power output of a diesel engine is actually with a higher pressure fuel injection systems, but you also get less PM, particulate matter, right? Because you have more complete combustion. If you atomize the fuel to a greater degree, each particle is more completely combusted. So that's actually a big innovation. And pressures have gone up from in the 2000s. And actually, the truck that my dad has, it was around 3,000, and now we're at about 30,000 with common rail. So that's a 10 times increase in pressure. That's gotten a lot more power. It's also gotten the PM emissions down. Now, what about NOx? NOx is a bitch. If you want to use that word. The main reason it's such a bitch is because it's mostly combustion temperature. Well, the Zeldovich mechanism dictates that it's a function of temperature. So linear function, it's literally an almost exponential function of temperature. It's not linear. It's exponential. So about, I think, 2800 Fahrenheit, it goes through the roof. And that means if I want to get NOx down, I can't do, it's got to be after treatment. It's got to be post-combustion. There's nothing I can do to reduce NOx inside the engine. The diesel cycle is the diesel cycle. It's never going to change. It's high temperature. That's just the way it is. I can't change that. So the only way to really get NOx down is with after treatment, because if you do it internally, you'll essentially be compromising the performance of the diesel cycle. Lower temperature, you're going to end up with an Otto cycle, and an Otto cycle is crappy. We don't want an Otto cycle. We want our diesel cycle: high temperature, high compression, combustion. Remember, the wind is bad. The higher the compression ratio, the more heat we get during the combustion. That's why the diesel cycle is more compressed. So it's the same with the Brayton cycle. The Brayton cycle is the same situation. You get high temperature. The turbine inlet temperature determines the efficiency in the power output, mostly. And the way you get a higher turbine inlet temperature is more air, but at a higher pressure. That's why you increase the pressure ratio. It's very simple math. It's very simple thermodynamics. And that's just kind of the way it goes. So if I reduce NOx, I reduce engine performance. I don't want to do that. So how do I reduce NOx? Fundamentally, it's all about after treatment, right? Unfortunately, diesels run rich, or no, they run lean. Unfortunately, diesels run very lean. A lot of excess air, way more air than you need for stoichiometric combustion. That's a good thing. It's more efficient. It's a lot cleaner. But I can't use a TWC. I can't use a three-way catalytic converter, because a three-way catalytic converter, the chemistry doesn't work if there's oxygen. So if there's too much oxygen, I can't use a TWC. What if I got rid of my oxygen in the after treatment? I could do that, but I don't know how the math you could try to filter it out, but I just don't know whether that would work. So So you have to somehow use some kind of a NOx reduction mechanism that, and actually hydrogen works. There's a German company that that injects hydrogen. It's very active for reducing NOx. But you have to have hydrogen on board. The best is urea. It's ammonia. The best is ammonia. So if you squirt enough ammonia in there, you can get NOx to acceptable levels. And the problem with ammonia is people don't like it. It's dangerous. So there's actually a company in Denmark. Uses solid storage, like a hydrid, kind of like a hydrogen storage hydrid, but for ammonia, and they work well. You can swap them out, and NOx emissions are really brought down to acceptable levels. So that's about the only thing you can do with NOx. It's real hard to get rid of NOx. There's tens of thousands of researchers at leading, because the reason I'm focusing on NOx, and I have a NOx sensor. I'm getting a new one. I'm getting one that you can hook up to your computer. The reason I focus so much on NOx is because NOx, it's not an emission, like it's not soot, right? It's a gas. It's NO2, N2O, nitrous oxide, nitrogen dioxide. This is kind of stuff you use as a rocket oxidizer. N2O4. It's real nasty stuff. And diesel engines spew it out like there's no tomorrow because they run so hot. So if you can't get NOx down, you're gonna lose you're gonna be like a cat. You're gonna be like cat. You're gonna be stuck to the off-road market. Cat just couldn't cut it. They just couldn't cut it. And I'm not saying it's all NOx, but the main it's NOx because Dieselgate's it's NOx. It's not PM. You can get PM down easily. Just you could put a paper towel over your truck, and there you go. You've reduced PM. As long as the air can go through, but the big particles, look, it's hard to separate out a little gas molecule. It's really easy to separate a piece of soot, carbon black. Actually, it's like mostly sulfur. And then there's another component. I don't remember the name, but it's if you make diesel fuel from hydrogen and carbon, if you just pull the carbon out from a gas power plant, it's all clean. It's carbon dioxide. We're actually better off with carbon monoxide, CO. You put the CO up with the hydrogen, wrap them together. You get your benzene, your long chain hydrocarbons. It doesn't make any soot because there's no sulfur, and there's this other. I don't remember the name, but remember, you're burning hydrogen and carbon. And actually, if you add carbon, you get more energy from the hydrogen. So carbon boosts the energy output of hydrogen. I've done the math. If you burn hydrogen on its own, you get 120 megajoule for 1 kilo. If you burn hydrocarbons, like all the hydrocarbons, right? They're all the same. Minor differences. If you make the chains long enough, it's plastic. If you make them really short, it's a gas. You get about 2.6 times more energy out of the hydrogen component of the hydrocarbon than you do if you just burn the hydrogen on its own. So it doesn't make any sense to use hydrogen except for aircraft, except for big aircraft, even smaller ones. There's a whole book on that. That's a whole different topic. But hydrogen, it wants to be up in the air. And hey, what did we use hydrogen for? Answer the question. We used it to power rockets. Right, exactly. So if you want it to be real light, you use hydrogen. If you don't care so much about weight, you use hydrocarbons because they're a lot denser. Right? It's very dense. You can pack all your diesel fuel in a small tank, whereas hydrogen will take up a whole room. So yeah, you're not going to see hydrogen for cars so much, and not for trucks, even though guys tell you will. What you're going to see is diesel engines with a free piston engine. So you just got a piston, and then you generate electricity on each side. You can have them double acting. You have combustion on both sides, two stroke, but ends up being a one stroke because you can get combustion on both sides. The free piston engine had lubrication issues. I've solved that. It's actually a guy from Iran who solved that problem. Iranian guy, he came up with it. I invented it independently. One day I was going to my dad's, or going with my dad to do some welding. We were going to do some welding, and just thought of it. Well, actually, I thought about it the night before, talking to my friend on Facebook. He said, well, he's not that smart anyway, but yeah, he got 2-cycle, so it's a diesel cycle, but 2-stroke. Intake exhaust valves, no wall ports. And then electric superchargers, because electric turbochargers, actually, not superchargers. You power, because electric motors have become really light. They become really light, and you can actually make really small, high-speed electric motors and power turbo. It's flexibility, right? You can have your airflow when your engine isn't running at high speed. You can get the power from the turbo, and you can generate electricity with it. Called a compound turbo. That's power. You don't need to compress air with it. You can compress air with it if you want, but you can also generate electricity, and they do that. So none of this is actually new technology. What I'm talking about, free piston engines are researched at universities all over the world. They work. So do free valves. And by the way, you're not going to have valve trains on future engines. You're never going to have valve trains. It's all going to be free valve, like Koenigsegg. Cars will be carbon fiber. Lighter trucks will be carbon fiber, because you don't care so much about weight if you're an 18-wheeler. But you don't care too much about weight if you're a car. But if you're an 18-wheeler, you care a lot about weight, because that's how you make money. So you're actually going to see trucks be made out of carbon fiber. The trailers, the whole chassis. Carbon fiber and electronics is going to change the industry, not batteries or fuel cells. Fuel cells work, but you got to have hydrogen, and we all know what it's like to store hydrogen. Go to your gas supply store and ask them for some hydrogen, and you're going to come back and tell me that's never going to be used in a million years on a car. And I went to the gas supply store, ended up realizing I'd have to have 100 hydrogen bottles to run my little jet engine. Said, okay, screw that. I ended up realizing I can take ammonia and just crack it into hydrogen. So yeah, free valve, free piston engine, synthetic hydrocarbons made from nukes. Yep, you'll have nuclear reactors. They'd be making their benzene, and we'll crack that. And then when you want to go into the big cities where people don't want to be exposed to NOx and all that nasty stuff, you can start up a fuel cell. It's called a high temperature fuel cell. It can take the CO, carbon monoxide, from the reformed fuel. You take the diesel, run it at reform about 900 degrees. Don't need a noble catalyst. You crack it, and you run it into your fuel cell. And the Army's done it. Just about the Germans are really pioneering this, as always. And basically, when you're in the city, you want to be quiet. You don't want to bother people with a big noisy diesel. And you want to have the fast acceleration from the electric drive, right? You can get that acceleration. But that's about it. Free piston, diesel, 2-stroke, double acting, free valve, electric turbos, carbon fiber chassis, and that's about all I can think. Self-driving's hard. It's hard. They've tried. Steve Wozniak came out and said he probably never see it in his lifetime. It's real hard to get a truck not to run people over. It's hard. There's guys working on it all day long, and they haven't done it by now. Computing power actually isn't increasing anymore. Moore's law is peaked. So I don't know about all that self-driving stuff. If you can get the computers to keep increasing in power, that's not the problem. The problem is having sensors on every angle of the truck. The problem is getting the truck companies to spend all the money on it, because it's never going to be cheap to make a LiDAR sensor. Yeah, they've gone down in cost a lot, but you remember, just because something goes down in cost doesn't mean it'll be cheap. Like, helicopters have gone down in cost, but they're still expensive. Used to cost a lot of money, if you wanted to build a rocket, right? Like a SpaceX rockets have become less expensive, but it still costs $50 million. It's like something can come down in cost, but still not become affordable. Truckers aren't exactly swimming in money. So if you're going to make tech for truckers, it's got to be cheap. And you might say, well, what about my technology? Well, see, carbon fiber isn't that expensive. It can become cheap. And free piston engines aren't expensive either, because electric motors are cheap. Have you ever bought a drill? Okay, thank you. Electric motors are cheap. Even very, very high performance, high speed electric motors. Electronics are cheap. Getting computers to do what humans do is an old idea. Watch 2001, The Space Odyssey. It's harder than people think to get computers to drive trucks or cars. And then you got to ask, who's liable? You ask me, truck companies, they can say, I ain't taking on that liability, right? So who's going to take on the liability? The computer companies will. So, who's going to take on the liability? Who's going to drive the trucks when they come into the cities? Like, okay, they can be self-driving on the road. Here's the problem. America, is bringing in, Hispanic or Mexican mestizo farm workers, right? It's like you can get someone to drive a truck for 30 grand a year. That's what they pay them. It's like you can say, well, I can buy a LiDAR truck for 100,000, but the tech's still not there. It's hard to compete against cheap Mexicans, and they drive all the trucks. Trust me, I live in California. So I don't know. I got a bit of I'm not an expert on that technology, but that's just my take on the future of trucking. Carbon fiber, diesel engines, but clean, very, very clean diesel engines with synthetic fuels. Because, people say we're not going to run out of oil. I'm not sure about that. My dad's an oil expert, an oil market expert. He predicted all the recent changes in the price of oil. Yeah, we will eventually run out of oil. We won't run out of natural gas, so we'll just take natural gas and make it into diesel fuel. That's easy. You got to get the carbon somewhere, but carbon's spewing out of the power plant, if you ask me. So it's not going to be expensive to make. You'll basically take natural gas and turn it into. In fact, you don't even need nukes because natural gas.